Hello everyone, welcome back to Trinity Stamps YouTube channel. I'm Rebecca Keppel and I am super excited to be here today with a card featuring stamping and coloring on acetate using the Beary Simple stamp set. Now this is part of the stamp set. There's also sentiments that are involved. I just cut the packaging down so I could fit it into my stamp pocket there. I am using 8.5 by 11 acetate and I am just cutting it in half so it's 5.5 so it fits in my original size MISTI. I'm going to make sure everything is really nice and lined up because I really don't want to smear any of the ink or stamp it and then have it be off center because this is a big stamp and I really want to cover it all with ink and I want to make sure I get a really good impression. So the ink that I'm going to be using today is the Stays On Pigment ink in black, and this is a great ink because it sits on top of the paper, the acetate in this case, but it dries relatively quickly, and this acetate can actually be heat embossed. So you could heat set it if you want to, but for what purpose I am using it for, I'm not going to worry about that because I'm actually going to color on the flip side so that the raised ink on the top will stay that way and I won't have any issues with ruining my Copic markers. So to get this stamp to stamp really clear, I just rub on the front of my MISTI with a microfiber towel. I know people have some tools that they use and things like that, but I find that just my own pressure with a microfiber towel works. And then look at that. They're so adorable, these bears. I just love them. Some have sunglasses, some are carrying hearts, they're wearing hats, they have ties. They're just adorable and they're so much fun to color in a bunch of colors. Somebody mentioned that they kind of look like gummy bears, and they totally do. So I have flipped the acetate over, so I am working on the back side of the acetate. And the reason that I'm doing that is because pretty much any ink that you can stamp on acetate is not good for your Copic markers. So basically what will happen is little bits of the ink can get into the brush tip and then it can just ruin the brush tip and stop up the flow of the ink. So I don't recommend coloring inside on the front. So we're just going to flip it over and then color on the back. Now, the other thing about this is when you're coloring on acetate, I did kind of learn the hard way. The quicker you can just kind of go through and wipe some color on back and forth, the better. Because if you start to go back and forth and then you go in and try and add more or fix it, it's going to pick up some of that ink that's already down. It dries really quickly, and so basically what happens is you put your wet brush down on a dry spot of the acetate that's already colored, and it's just picking up that dry ink. You can see on the marker there I ended up picking up the dark color, so I had to swipe away on the white paper to get rid of that dark color because I wanted it lighter. Okay, I am die cutting out the scalloped edge slimline die here, and I am going to just trim out the center because I just want the border there, and I didn't happen to have a slimline die to trim that out, so I'm just using a craft knife and a ruler to do it. This is like super old school, right? But it was relatively simple with this craft knife because it's like handheld like that. Then I am going to place some tape runner on the back side of that scallop there. When it kind of is, you can still see it from the front, just use your finger to tuck it behind and it will go right behind and you won't see it anymore. And then I'm going to lay that scalloped edge down onto, now we're working on the front. So now I'm working on the stamped side, not the colored side, so that the stamped raised side will still be on the front and the colored side will stay on the back. And I'm just going to trim the acetate down just slightly smaller than the scalloped edge because we colored on acetate, we might as well turn it into a shaker, right? That's how I feel. Anytime I'm working on acetate, I'm like, oh, this is going to be a shaker then. So I'm just going to use some really thin pieces of foam tape, and I'm just going to do a very wide open shaker. This whole rectangle is going to be the opening for the shaker. Just makes it easy, honestly. You don't have to do it that way, but I just think this is super, super simple to create that rectangle border around the edge, just making sure that all of your foam pieces touch each other so that they trap the shaker goodies inside. So then I am just going to, once I have all my foam pieces down, I'm just going to pour some sequins right behind those little colorful bears there. They're so cute. And then peel off the back protective layers on each of the pieces of the foam. This is a very gentle motion that you're trying to do here, because if you shake it too much, those little shaker goodies can pop out and then stick to the foam, and that's like a whole other process. I've done that as well. So once everything is revealed, then I cut another of those scallops, but this time I didn't cut out the center, obviously, and I'm just going to lay it down. And the way that I did was I lined up the corner scallop with the corner scallop underneath. That actually was really easy to do. And then just press down to make sure that the foam is attached to the back and that all those shaker goodies are trapped inside. And check that out. Isn't that so cute? I had so much fun with this card because those colors just make me so happy of the bears. And I love seeing all their little faces. I just think they're so adorable. And then add sequins to it and I'm in love. Okay, so this is the sentiment part of the stamp set that, like I said, I just trimmed down the packaging so that it all could fit in a normal size stamp and die pocket. And I'm going to use one of those sentiments to stamp and heat emboss on black cardstock. So I am just lining up the sentiment at the bottom of the cardstock and the bottom of my mini Misty. And then I'm going to use some anti-static powder tool. Mine comes out a lot like that, so I brush away with just a fan brush so that it's not clumped, because you won't be able to really stamp through that. So I'm gonna use Versamark ink and just ink up that sentiment stamp, and then close the door of the Misty to stamp it down at the very bottom of that black cardstock. And I just keep a A2 piece of black cardstock right near my desk so that I can just keep working on the bottom of that cardstock until it's too tiny to continue to work on it. So now I'll just add my white embossing powder on top. And once everything is covered up on that stamp set, I'll use my heat tool, make sure it's nice and hot, and then melt that embossing powder. And I always forget how much I love white embossing powder on black cardstock. Then I just use my guillotine trimmer to trim down the sentiment to just a little bit above, and then make it nice and tight on the sides so that it's not too big, because I don't want to cover up too many of those bears. So then I just put a piece of foam tape behind the sentiment so that I could pop it up. And you see, I'm just like, don't want to cover any of the faces. I just kept moving it around to think, where can I put it that it will cover as little as possible? I miss you so much, I can barely stand it. I've shown this before. Just put the panel in your score pal and figure out where it goes to, and then score at that line so you don't have to bring out a ruler, and then fold there and really score it down. And then just put that fold into your trimmer so that you're cutting at the very bottom. And this is just a really simple, easy way to create a card base without having to measure anything. Then I just put some tape runner on top of the card base, lay that whole shaker panel on top, and really press down to make sure everything is adhered. And that's it. Super, super simple way to color and stamp on acetate. So, and then turn it into a shaker. I really hope you enjoyed this and will give it a try. If you're interested in any of the supplies from Trinity Stamps that I use, they'll all be linked down below. I hope you have a wonderful day.